Hi, welcome to another episode of Determining the Mindset. Today we have Kelly Covert with us. She is an inner voice coach with a passion to help women entrepreneurs to believe in themselves and have a better wisdom with their inner self. And she is the creator and host of In Her Voice podcast. So welcome, Kelly. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you started your own business, helping women entrepreneurs with their inner voice?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Cindy. I'm really excited to be here talking to all of you today. And for me, what I do as an inner voice coach is I really help women tap into that inner wisdom that we all have and really start living by that and let go of all of the shoulds and need tos and all of the expectations that we lay on top of ourselves or that other people lay on top of us, so we can really get to the heart of what our purpose is in this world. And I especially love working with entrepreneurs who have a big vision, who know that they're here for something so much greater than themselves, but sometimes we get stuck in that, right? Like we get stuck in sort of beating ourselves up or listening to that inner mean voice that has a different story to tell us than what our inner wisdom has to say. And so that's what I really love doing. And it's interesting how I came into it. I'm actually a professional musician, and I still teach and perform professionally. And what I recognized in my teaching as a flute instructor is that I can teach all of the practical pieces of how to play the flute and how to do things a certain way and how to use your air and do your fingers and all of that. But at a higher level, and I teach college students only. Now, at that higher level, when we're talking about making a career of being a musician, what I feel is most important and the thing that I'm most passionate about teaching my students is believing that they can do it, believing that they were called for a reason. And when I started to recognize that, I thought, there's so many other people out there who also have that calling and have that need to really believe in that and trust it and learn the practices and the tools that they can employ on a daily basis in order to develop that trust. And so that's sort of how I shifted into life coaching, because it's just an extension of what I've been doing all along.
That's awesome, because it's so true for entrepreneurs, especially for myself. It's so hard to step out in the beginning and knowing that we can do this and even trying new things, right? And that's all, like, for entrepreneurs. Every day we have to come up with new plans and what to do next. So that's so good, Kelly, that you're doing this and helping women to have to be in their authentic self.
Yeah, and that's really what it's all about. And I feel like a lot of the dissatisfaction that we feel on a daily basis comes from when we're not being authentic, when we're not being true to ourselves, when we're trying to make ourselves fit in a box that was never meant for us to begin with. And I think entrepreneurs in particular have a tendency to do this because we want it to work, right? So we look at what's working for other people and think that's what we have to do. It has to look like that. And then we get frustrated when it's not working, when really we have the deep answers inside of us. And that's what we need to trust, even if it looks different, even if it's not what everyone else is doing. We just have to know that that's where our value is. That's where our worthiness is, and we can trust it.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. So how would you, how is your daily routine? How is your, what steps do you take to actually do that on a daily basis?
Well, I think this is such a good question because it's so integral to my own practice. And it's something that I have developed over the course of many years as I've come to understand that it's so important for me to have that direct line to my inner voice and know what I need to do to be able to have that open all of the time, because there's a lot going on. Like, we have a lot of input, and I have kids and, you know, a husband, and I do other things. And so if I'm not really intentional about that routine, I get distracted and it gets noisy up in my head. And so what I do on a daily basis is I journal my gratitude. I write down my goals every single day. Like, even if it's just like a bullet point, I write them down every single day, because I think it's really important to be connected to that. And these are goals that are not, you know, externally based. These are goals that have really come up from my soul. And I want to be connected and have those insight every single day. And then we'll do a little bit of meditation, and then sometimes I will just free journal, or if I'm working on a particular thing, I'll journal around a particular question. And that usually takes me anywhere between 20 and 45 minutes, depending on how much time I have. But that's sort of my non-negotiable. And then usually after that, I'll move my body, I'll work out, I'll make myself feel really strong by my actions. And then I settle in for the day of work, whatever that might look like. And for me, it looks different every single day. And so that's why I really value that morning routine, because I know I can depend on that, and that even if I don't have any aha moments during that time, what it does is it creates space for me for the rest of the day, to know that things are clear and things are running the way they're supposed to run, and I'm much more present and I'm less reactionary when I'm having that time. So I can really, you know, take a moment and pause and tap in and say, what do I really need right now? Or how do I really want to respond in this particular situation right now? And so that's what that morning time gives me.
Oh, wow. That's really good. So how do you suggest for people that are like in their busy schedule and they're always like just rushing for work? I know probably getting up early is one very possible thing to do, but what else do you suggest people to incorporate those kind of habits in their daily activities?
Well, I think that what we have to do is we have to make them non-negotiable. So we have other non-negotiables in our life, most of us, that would look like brushing our teeth every morning, right? Like, that's something that we're going to do because we do it, right? Or taking a shower, or eating, or having our coffee, right? So I think a really good way to start to ease into that place is, first of all, not try to do too much. I mean, if you're not doing anything right now, and then you try to have a 45-minute routine, that's going to be a recipe for failure very quickly. So start small, and then build in, and find the things that work for you. And I like to build them into my other non-negotiables. So I build it into my morning routine. I schedule it in my calendar. I actually don't schedule my journaling time anymore. I used to have to do that, but I've gotten to where that is. But I still schedule every single workout that I do in my calendar. And I do not move them. I don't let other people say, oh, well, I have this time. And I'll be like, oh, well, I was just going to do a workout at that time, and move it. Those are non-negotiables. They're not available for other people to use, or for me to give away to other people. That's my time. So really recognizing how important it is, and making it part of your routine and part of your schedule. And it doesn't matter when you do that. It could be at lunchtime. It could be before you go to bed. But it's just sort of understanding that this is what I need to be at my highest level, to be functioning at my highest level of performance. And that is the most important thing. That is more important than my kids. That is more important than my husband. That is more important than my job or my business. Because if I am not showing up in the world as I want to be, as I know I can be, I'm not going to be able to be the best mom, or the best business owner, or the best wife, or whatever. So it seems selfish. But when you look at it as, I almost feel like it's selfish not to do those things, because I'm not going to be who I know I can be if I'm not doing those things. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. A lot of moms, they tell me this, even though I'm not a mom myself yet, but they just tell me that they always have to take care of their kids or their husband, and they always forget about themselves. And as a exercise coach and also a physical therapist, I educate people too. Same is about how you have to change your habits and your actions.
Well, and it's mindset too. Like I love the name of your show here, because it's shifting that understanding that when I'm journaling and meditating, that is for my kids, right?
Yeah.
That is for my husband. That is for my business, because that is what allows me to show up fully for all of them. And so sometimes we just need to shift that mindset of how we think about it. And then it especially for people, I think, who have that deep sort of feeling that they need to be of service to their children. And this comes up a lot, right? I think moms, we use our kids as an excuse to not do the things that we're supposed to do. And that sometimes I say that and people are like, oh, I can't believe you said that. But if we're really honest with ourselves, we do it, you know? And so not letting that be an excuse for us, and understanding that when we take time for ourselves, it is for our kids as much as it is for us.
Yeah, totally agree. So Kelly, can you share like a story of how you become this life coach?
Yeah, well, I'll share a story of how I recognized how important our inner voice is, and loving ourselves fully is, my oldest son is on the spectrum, and he has some challenges, and I have challenges parenting him because of that. And when he was first born, I was coming from this place of knowing that in my life, the way things worked up to that point was, if I had any sort of struggle or challenge, I would work really hard, and I would read a lot of books, and I would ask a lot of questions, and I would do it the way everyone else did, and it worked, and I was successful. And so I sort of had this natural tendency as a perfectionist, as a high achiever, like I will just make it work. I'll just work really hard. And when my son was born, it didn't work. Like my formula did not work. And I was like, but I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. And it still didn't work. And I really felt like I was failing. And after he was diagnosed, for like 5 minutes, I was like, oh, it's not me. And then I had the challenge of being a mom of a special needs child. And so I went about it the same way. I just wasn't reading the right books before, right? And it still wasn't working. It wasn't working. And so I remember one night I'd had a really rough night with my son, and I just was frustrated. I didn't even want to be around him, because like being around him reminded me of like what a failure I was as a mother. Like I just felt like I was failing, and then I couldn't figure it out. And I had never failed anything before in my life. Like everything had just, and I say this because I think high achievers can relate to this. You just work really hard and you figure it out. And all of a sudden I was in this place where it wasn't working, and I was failing, and I couldn't figure it out. And I remember one night, I had been so frustrated. I didn't even want to be around him. And he went to bed, he was asleep, and I went and laid down in his bed with him, because I just wanted to like be with him and not be frustrated. And I laid down with him, and I was rubbing his back, and he was sleeping, and his breath was really calm, and my breath started to slow down, and I got really still. And in that moment, I recognized that I have to love myself fully in order to be able to love my child fully. I have to recognize that I have what it takes to be his mother. Like I innately within me. And that means allowing myself to not look like everyone else, to make decisions that are coming from within me, even if my mom disagrees with them, even if school disagrees with them, even if society disagrees with them. I have to trust that. And loving myself is what allows me to do that. And so that was really for me the beginning of this journey of connecting with my inner voice and learning how to trust it and learning how to tell the difference between the voice that tells me I have to go, go, go all the time and I have to make it look like this and do it like this. And the voice that says to me, I am worthy now. Even if I never achieve another thing, I am enough. I have all of the answers that I need within me, even if they don't look like everyone else's. And so as I practiced that, I started seeing how many other people really were in this place of struggle, of feeling like they're failing or feeling like they're not good enough or feeling like when they do this thing, then they're going to be good enough. And I really don't believe that. It was a huge paradigm shift for me. And now I feel really passionate about sharing that with other women, especially women who tend to be perfectionists and tend to be sort of chronic overachievers and always seeking that external validation. You know, we have the answers that we need and we are worthy right this minute, not if or when, or, you know, when I do this thing or that thing, or when my kid looks like everyone else's kid, or whatever your struggle is, you are worthy right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the message. It's so true that we often just don't think that we are enough and we're worthy. And that message just like makes us realize that sometimes it's okay to say that we are good enough, you know?
All the time it's okay.
Yes.
All the time it's okay for us to say that. Every moment. And it's a practice. So as much as I believe this and I teach it, there are moments where I don't feel good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes up, those thoughts come up because I live for how long with those thoughts in my head, right? They don't just go away. And so every time that comes up, again, we have another opportunity to say, oh, right, yes, I am good enough right now. So we're always in the practice of doing that.
Mm-hmm. So what, like, when you hear those voices that like kind of telling you that, oh, I'm a failure, what steps do you take, or like how do you overcome those challenges, or if you encounter any challenges in your life, how do you overcome them?
Well, I think that this is a really good question because this is the heart of the matter, right? Like, how do we fix it?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, I don't even like the word fix because it implies that something's wrong. I think for me, when those voices come up, first of all, I have to be aware that I do not have to believe every single thought that I have, right? My thoughts are not me. My thoughts do not control me, and my thoughts are not truth unless I make them to be truth. And I think that's what we do a lot is we have the thought, I'm not good enough, or I suck, or whatever, and we make that to be true about ourselves. We believe that about ourselves. So the first step is really that awareness of understanding that our thoughts are not us, and that we can choose which thoughts that we're going to believe. We can choose which thoughts we're going to manifest out in speaking, because sometimes we think it and then we speak it. We can choose how we speak to ourselves. And so having that awareness first that, oh, there it is. Sometimes we don't even recognize that we're having these thoughts or that we're speaking to ourselves in this way of like beating ourselves up. So once we're aware, then we can start to shift that behavior. And I like to use mantras for that. Again, like for me, tapping into that morning ritual of journaling, gratitude, meditation is really good for me because I find that when I do that, I don't have as many of those negative thoughts, right? It's clear and I have a clear channel to my inner voice. Whereas if I don't do that, things get crowded in my head a little bit more. So it's just really about changing the conversation and practicing deeply self-compassion. So you can think of if you were your best friend was going through a hard time, or your kid was going through a hard time, what would you say to them? And those are the same things that you say to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You don't say to yourself, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? Why can't you push through? Like, you wouldn't say that to your kid or to your best friend. So we have to really treat ourselves the way that we would treat our children, the way we would treat our best friends, and love ourselves and practice compassion.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's something that I learned today. I never thought that we can actually ignore some of the thoughts and just like be aware, like you said, maybe not all the thoughts are true, and be able to sort it out is really good advice.
Yeah, and that sorting out, like, that's where journaling comes in, I think. So for me, if I keep having this one thought that's popping up that, I'm not doing something right, or that I'm feeling really down or kind of in a funk or whatever, that's what I'll journal on. Like, where is that coming from? Why am I struggling with that now in this particular situation? Can I track that back to a time in my life where I may have had a similar feeling? And usually most of these thoughts and beliefs that we have were created when we were younger. And so we can kind of go back to that younger self and look at the situation that created that belief for us in a new way, and understand it with the wisdom that we have now. And that's how we can sort of start to shift those beliefs that, we're not good enough, or that we're not lovable, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, so like you've worked with so many people, I'm sure. And what is the hardest thing that people or women in general is hard to let go?
What is hard to let go? I think that something that's really hard for women to let go of is comparison. And, we're brought up in this society that honors women for the way that they look, and it honors men for how much money they make, or how much power they have, right? Like, we're taught these stories from birth that you are good enough when you are a certain size, or you are good enough when you are a certain age, or if you look a certain way, or if your skin is a certain color, right? All of these stories we're taught by the advertising that we see on TV, by what we read in magazines, by our parents, right? All of these things come down. And so we live in a place of constant comparison. And I find, even for myself, and I'm deep in a practice of worthiness and self-compassion and love, that comparison pops up. And it sometimes, I think, especially as high achievers, we're like, well, how do we know when we're good enough? How do we know when we've reached our potential? How do we know when we get there if we're not comparing to other people? And that's really the paradigm shift, like I mentioned. It's really about understanding that you're there already, that we're on a journey. We're not like in a race.
Yeah.
And the journey is always going to continue. Like, we're always in this place of growth and development and worthiness, always. And so again, it's a practice of letting go of that, and of recognizing too, like, when I compare myself to someone else, I'm not creating in my own life what I want to feel. So I get to create how I feel. And if I'm comparing, I'm going to feel sadness or anger or resentment or, judgment. Like, sometimes we compare and we're like, oh, I'm better than that person. And even that doesn't feel good, right? So it's about coming to this place of acknowledging that if I want to feel joyful, if I want to feel peaceful, if I want to feel connected, if I want to feel in my own flow and feel authentic, these are all things that are important to me to feel. Then I had to do things that help me feel that way. And comparing never does that. So getting really clear on how we want to feel, I think, is the first step to that. And then recognizing that comparison is always a recipe for disaster. Always.
Wow. So it's like a kind of a daily practice that we have to do in order to stay true to ourselves, right?
Yeah. It's practicing being authentic. And
Mm-hmm.
I really dig the word practicing because as a musician, like it's something that's just part of who I am. Like I have to practice. And I've been playing flute, for 33 years and I still have to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I would consider myself, I'm a professional and I have mastered my instrument, I still must practice.
Mm-hmm.
In order to be able to play at the level that I want to play. And so practice isn't about one and done. It's not about, oh yeah, I'm worthy. And that's it. It's over and over and over again process. And it's something that we should look to with joy and look to with sort of this feeling of that's our life's work. Practicing is our life's work.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. So if right now you have to give 3 advice for women who want to start today to be true to themselves and practicing their authentic self, what 3 specific advice would you tell them today?
Let's see. Number 1, I would say, going along with what we've said, figure out what your self-care non-negotiables are. So mine are my morning ritual. I don't, I'm sure, Cindy, that you have some, if it's movement or whatever. Figure out what your non-negotiables are and make them happen. Schedule them, make it a priority for you. And also know that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So 1 minute matters. 1 minute is better than 0 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's true of everything. So it's easy to be black and white about that, about like, well, if I can't get 20, then forget it. And I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice. So find what your non-negotiables are and find what works for you and how much time works for you. So you can kind of experiment with that. So that's number 1. Let's see. Number 2, give up comparing. Let it go, right? Remind yourself that you are amazing and beautiful and flawed and imperfect. And we all are that. And we are all connected in that way. Like we're all the same. We all have the same kind of struggles. We all worry that we're doing something wrong. We all sometimes don't want to be around our kids if we have kids, right? We're all in this place of constantly feeling like there's more. And when we recognize that we're all the same, then, we don't have to compare anymore. And then the third one is to know deeply and practice deeply that if you never get another job, get another raise, lose another pound, hire, have another client or whatever it is, the thing that you want to do, if you never do any of those things, you are worthy right in this moment. Our worthiness does not become bigger based on what we do, and it doesn't diminish based on what we don't do. It's a part of us since the moment that we were born, and we can use that to tap into and begin to practice all of the things that we've been talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you. That's such a great advice. And I'm sure like with just changing your mindset and doing some of those action steps that you talked about, and also exercising, every day, that helps people and women in general to stay healthy and strong, both spiritually and physically, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel that moving your body is such a good way to connect with our inner voice because often our inner voice speaks to us through our body. So if we're connected to that through movement, we have a better awareness of what's going on and how our body feels. So for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kelly. So one last thing is, how do people find you if they want to reach out to you to ask questions and things like that?
Well, the best way to find all things about me, including my podcast and anything else that I might be offering at the time, is my website, which is kellycovert.com. And also on the website, while you're there, you can sign up for my free 5-day journaling program. It's right on the top of the website. You can just sign up right there. And so it's a great way to start your practice of journaling, to kind of figure out what works for you, if journaling is going to work, if it's not going to work. And so if that's something that you're interested in, you can get that there. And then I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Kelly J. Covert. You can find me.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelly. And this episode is sponsored by Cozy Physical Therapy. And determining the mindset is where we want to empower women to be dreamers who take action. So today, hopefully you learn something from Kelly and start taking actions to be closer to your own self. So thank you for listening to this episode, and have a great day.